First of all, I'm Paul Bennett. I guess I'm here more so as I'd like to think as a member of the community, I think, when I think either it was John or Michael reached out to me. Can you hear me back okay, Michael? Good? A bit higher? Better? Okay. When they reached out to me, I was very thrilled to be part of this. It's something that I actually it was part of what I went to school for in terms of economics and the social impact of economics, and it's something that's actually great to revisit again. And the first thing I'd like to touch on before I even go any further here is to actually, if you haven't been out to the Mount yet, it is one of the most spectacular properties you could ever go to. It is a success story that hopefully in decades from now we'll all talk about what the Mount did and what it actually kicked forward for our community and hopefully other communities, because it's a really great example for that. And also I'm going to give another quick shout out that you touched on to Kawartha Credit Union as well. The Mount dealt with Kawartha Credit Union when we did VentureNorth, which is kind of in some ways, a social innovation for business. The idea of it being that we brought a bunch of groups together that they could help and start and grow in business, but then in the same breath, the funds that were produced from that building would then be reinvested back in the business community. Same as Steve was saying, we never thought of it as a social innovation or social financing piece at all, but when you look at it, it's basically the same. We had a good conversation here prior to sitting down here, as I'm looking to Pat from CFDC back there, about how there's so much that goes on in our community right now that actually is social finance and social investment, social innovation of some kind. Community Futures, the Community Foundation, even angel investing that happens in our community is a form of social investment and social innovation. So I think it's one of those things that we need to look around and see what's in our community right now and build on it, because there are lots of great examples out there right now that are existing, but there's also a lot of things that we need to do improve. One thing that Steve also did touch on is the current state of our governments. I saw Keith back there. I don't know if Kemi's here or not. I think she was supposed to come. Oh, she is here. There she is. They would be the first people to say that our municipal governments don't have a whole lot of money. It's 8, 9, 10, 11% of discretionary income every year. It's one of those things that I think as a community we really need to work together to sort out ways in which we can partner, whether it be through private partnerships or social innovations and social finance pieces of some kind, to create new ways in which our communities can go forward. We obviously have a beautiful community to live in, but we have a ton of issues that we need to address that governments themselves can't address. We need to work together and find plans, of which the Mount is a great plan, a great partnership that shows ways in which we can do that. But it isn't, as Steve alluded to again, isn't just for housing. Right now we have an opioid crisis, we have food insecurity, climate change, arts and culture. All of these things are things that on an annual basis depend on some form of funding, and it's unfortunate to say, but that funding probably isn't going to last. So we have to find ways in which we can create growing, not just sustaining ways, so our community can grow in all those different areas. As I mentioned, I did actually go to school for the economic side of this, and it was a long time ago. But I think maybe like Kawartha Credit Union will touch on this. The original idea behind banking and credit unions was the idea that everyone in a community got their money together and pooled money and gave it to people that needed it, whether it was for a business startup, whether it was for education, whether it was for people that needed a home loan. And then obviously banks got to a point that they were obsessed with ROIs, not just helping people out. And we got to a point where that isn't the way that it is anymore. But credit unions and also some other kind of social finance locally is still in that world where they can actually have some kind of socially conscious mind, not just a return on investment. Some things that I see happening in my world in terms of the housing side, we all know what REITs are, which are real estate investment trusts. They started in, basically it's a big world of owning larger properties or larger portfolios of properties. I think there's a large appetite right now for REITs to actually become more socially conscious and have more affordable housing drives to them. So I think the government has an opportunity right now, whether it be municipally or provincial or federal, to get involved on a funding level with those, and especially on a local level. I think we'd all say that there's a lot of people locally that has happened with the Mount. If they could take a lesser return and invest their money locally and create affordable housing, arts hubs, one-stop location with services for an opioid center, addiction center, those kind of things. There's lots of money in the community that doesn't just have to come from the actual municipal government itself that we could capture and get these things done, not say that we don't have the funding to get them done. And kind of once again to say to Steve's point, I think it's really important that we be very broad in our thinking and think big, because there's so many different areas of this that can actually be tackled with a community approach that isn't just a government, private, public, or everyone on their own if we do it all together. Yeah, so I have a ton of other stuff here I'd like to talk about, but I don't really want to take up a ton of time, so I think maybe the best I'll just pass it over here next, and I'm here to take any questions if my input at all can help it. But I'm excited to sit down with people and get some other thoughts, because once again, in the hour and a half we talked prior to this, we met earlier, I learned a ton, and I think we even came up with some great ideas that we can all work together on just from that hour and a half. So same thing, I think there's a lot of great community members here, and the group of us talking will be able to solve some issues and work together on it, and hopefully work out with some great ideas.